Hey guys, just here in the living room. I think a lot of you guys are kind of in the same boat. Maybe some of you are just walking around the house in your gi at this stage, not really knowing what you can do, or maybe you're kind of just, hip escaping through the hallway or something. But look, we have some mats down right now. You don't necessarily need mats to be able to do what we're going to do, but let's try and get some jiu-jitsu done so that way we can keep our movements sharp. I want to make sure that, especially for myself, that the rhythms are in time. Because the one thing I think that is probably going to be the biggest problem for everybody coming back is timing, right? If we practice the physical motions to be able to look at some details, even if it's using something like a sweatshirt as your opponent, or even a t-shirt as your opponent, or even a tank top as your opponent, unless you guys are like living on the beach all day, every day, like just use the shorts or something, right? I know everybody's got a t-shirt somewhere, so, well, hopefully, if you're doing jiu-jitsu anyway. So we have a grappling dummy here. If you don't have a grappling dummy, don't worry about it. Grab your gi, stuff it with some pillows, tie your belt around it, and then that way you kind of have a little bit of depth. So you have a simulation of a body, even though of course it's not as good as the real thing. But also, if you have families, bring your families in, put the gi on them, and use your kids, or if you have a partner, use your partner. And now's a great time to kind of bring them into your world. So if they weren't already involved and you guys are coming home late from jiu-jitsu and your wife and kids are like, man, come on, what are you doing? You're taking so long, where have you been? I know you love this thing. Now's a perfect time to kind of get them involved in what your interests are. And, who knows? Maybe when we come out on the other side, maybe they're going to stick with it, and then you may actually have a whole jiu-jitsu team on your hands at home, which could be pretty interesting. It'll make it easier for you to practice, too, outside. Anyway, let's look at some movements. I want to make sure that, like I said, the timing is in. So we'll do the movements second on the grappling dummy, but first I'm going to do the movements just solo, okay? This is one of my favorite positions is from side control, but we're going to work more on like a knee ride situation, but it's just switching your hip over, okay? So when we do the switching of the hip, I want to make sure that I'm nice and loose. I've got to loosen up the musculature and program my body to be able to understand the movements, because like I said, that timing, if you let it slip, if it's not in practice, it's going to be very clunky when you come back. So let's look at the movement first. It's really simple. It's essentially this, right? So if I were to be in side control, or any variation of side control, right, I want to get my knee involved. But what I want to do, just for the sake of the drill, is to turn my hip over, right? So when I turn my hip over, I'm going to be able to then replace my knee and then turn my hip over. So it's this sort of movement that I'm looking at. And I'm just kind of stretching out the musculature, just making sure it's nice and smooth. So when I do it on the dummy, and like I said, you might just be working with a jacket. So it's this sort of movement. It's a recovery position, right? And it's also a way to adjust your position. It's the same thing on the opposite side. Sometimes you have to switch. So as I switch the knee ride, so you'll see here, the position switches. Sometimes you guys end up in knee ride like this, but because of regulations in jiu-jitsu, a lot of the attacks go up into the upper body, but sometimes we have to switch into the lower body, which is becoming more and more popular now. So it's the same thing. I can switch my hip down to be able to change positions, right? So it's basically this. 1, knee, 2, knee, 1, knee, 2. So I'm going up and down the body. That's the first one. That's mostly for being able to cultivate a nice, free-flowing, loose motion, so that way you can keep it when you go back and you start to switch your side controls.